so understanding that I was going through in the past, ADHD.
Yeah.
I just thought that school, high school, college, all that stuff was just normally impossible. And
Yeah.
so I really wish, when I actually I found out, ADHD and I was actually medicated properly, I was like, holy crap. Like this is actually what the world is like.
Right. I spoke a little while back on mental health and having that awareness of how much this really affects the collision industry. And I had been told that the collision industry has one of the highest rates of suicide across all industries in the United States. And I was shocked. I mean, I know what we do is stressful and anxiety filled, but I had no idea that it was really to that level. So just like you were talking about, Kevin, I really want to push into this. And this is really where the gem lies here for everybody listening is this mental health support. So Richie, I'm going to kick this over to you for a minute so you can chat about that.
Yeah, of course. So I think there's a stigma when it comes to health insurance these days where employees think, oh, when I use it, it's gonna cost me an arm and a leg. So I'm just not gonna use it, right? I'm gonna have it
Mm.
for when I get into a catastrophic accident, right? Or even maybe even a little bit more simply saying, I'm gonna have it for when I absolutely need it and I don't have any other options. What you don't see a lot in
Right.
the religion space is someone saying, oh, I'm gonna go take advantage of my insurance that I have.
Mm.
I'm gonna go on the offensive because I think it is quite common to have exactly what I just explained happen. You go and use the insurance, and all of a sudden you get a $300 bill in the mail, and you're like, where did this come from? Why? And it just really is a pretty negative experience for the individual involved. And so I think just speaking back to culture, right? When you're offering your health insurance to one of your employees and your employee goes and uses that coverage and they have a negative experience,
Mm.
they're going to look at you, right? And you're doing a good job by providing health insurance, right? You're trying to do what's right by the employees, but they're always going to associate the coverage that you're offering with you as their employer if it's an employer sponsored
Good
health.
point. Yeah.
Mhm.
So what you have the opportunity to do as an owner is you can take advantage of the opposite effect, right? They're going to look at you and they're going to say, "Oh, my owner or my, employer is offering me this coverage. Wow, that was an amazing experience." So you can reap those rewards if you are thinking about the package that you're offering. So for instance, Mickey, you just brought it up, mental health, right? It is a massive problem in the collision space. You can really look at the industries that have problems with suicides, and it's usually blue collar, male driven, work with your hands type of industry.
Mm.
You could really understand why, right? Because there
Mm.
is a machismo culture of, hey, I'm not going to the doctor unless unless
Right.
I
If my
absolutely
arm
have.
falls off, maybe I'll go. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's I've heard horror stories of someone getting a spider bite and having that turn into a staph infection because they didn't want to go use their health insurance coverage, right? Where you're like, hey,
Right.
if you just would have went to urgent care, none of this would have happened.
Yeah.
But the same thing is with mental health care, right? If you just ignore it, it's going to get worse. It's not something that if
Mm.
I just keep shoving it down,
Right. Good
it's going to
point.
get better. So, back to what I was saying earlier about the stigma of insurance where employees think, well, if I use this thing, it's going to cost me a bunch of money. Well, if you're an employer and you're forward thinking and you're critically thinking about the benefits package that you're offering and you're actively communicating what that package looks like to your employees, you have the ability to get a significantly higher. I don't like saying the term ROI because this is health
Mhm.
insurance, it's mental health care, right? Like this isn't
Right.
ROI, it's about taking care of your employees. But just if you're looking at it from a numbers perspective, the best way to get the most out of your health insurance package is making sure your employees understand what they're getting. And part of that is communicating, hey, if you go see a mental health care professional, this is what the cost would look like. And if
Mm.
you have the ability to make that affordable or even $0, you're going to get a much higher satisfaction rating out of that health insurance plan when your employees understand what they're going to pay for it, how to use it, And then this is the hardest part, actually getting them to go use it.
Right. Exactly. Well, I
Mhm.
had heard, so I did a past interview with Andy Tilka from Tag Automotive, and I had to just pull up my notes real quick because he gave me another statistic. He said that 1 in 20 adults experience a serious mental health condition, meaning bipolar, PTSD, schizophrenia, but 1 in 5 people experience some type of mental disorder. And this is just the people that admit to it when they're doing the surveys, right?
Mhm.
So it's probably more than that. You figure, mental health disorder does not mean you are doing something crazy. That just means like high levels of stress, anxiety, depression that you're not even realizing is depression. So I think a lot
Yeah.
more people actually suffer from these things, especially like you're talking about in our industry, than are willing to admit it because it's like we don't talk about it because it's a weakness. It's we think of it as a weakness. Other people will view it as a weakness. So I'm not going to speak about it. I just keep plowing through. And just to your point, Richie, if it doesn't get taken care of, it just compiles and it becomes a
Mhm.
bigger problem. It doesn't, you don't ignore it and so it goes away. You ignore it and it grows. And I think that's the biggest issue. I'm glad you said that because that makes complete sense. When did you transition from the 5 day work week to the 4 day work week? Let's start there.
Uh, let's see. So we're coming up on our third, so to be 3 summers ago. This will be our
Okay.
third summer. In June.
Wow.
So we just finished our third full year. And it was a situation where we heard about it, from somewhere, and we pulled our team together for a meeting and said, "Is this something that you guys would consider?" And we knew it was going to have to be kind of an all or nothing,
Right.
type of implementation. So, and we told them that we were very open with them. This is what it could look like. And um, the majority of them were not interested, I would say.
Oh,
And that surprised me, I'll be honest.
yeah.
But we had a few that just, they're like 10-hour days. That's too much.
Mm.
So that's cool. We backed off. And then I think what you just said is kind of what started to happen. They just like that little seed was planted and they just started thinking about it a little bit. And a few of them kind of came back around and said, let's revisit this. So we had, out of a team of, I think we had probably, I don't know, 15 people on our team at the time. Only 2 of them were still on the fence, let's say.
Okay.
And so we just said, how about you give us like a month. Let's do this for 4 weeks and see what happens.
Yeah. Okay.
And we did that little trial period. It might have been 6 weeks. I'm trying to remember now, but either way, we did that. And after just week 2, those guys came back and they're like, yeah, this is awesome. We're going to keep it.
Really?
Yes, because they realize, the longer days are tough, but when you can have a 3-day weekend every weekend, that's pretty
Right.
cool. Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it's not like it's a 12-hour day. And a lot of people put in 10 hours and don't even realize because a lot of times you're working longer just to finish things up, wrap things up.
Yeah. So we kind of let them choose. They actually chose to shorten their lunch break to 30 minutes.
Okay.
So we kind of just took a group vote, kind of like a democracy, and that's what we do. And that helps shorten their day a little bit too.
Right. So then they're not done quite as late in the evening. So typically what's does that affect the hours that your shop is open or just the hours that the techs are working? What does that look like?
At the time of that transition, our front office staff they still are, all pretty young folks with younger kids. And Chris and I are included in that bunch. We've got 3 small children, 8, 6, and 4. And at the time, I guess if you back that up 3 years ago, I think there were 4, 2, and newborn.
Wow.
So, getting them to daycare, they can't sit at daycare for like 12 hours because by the time you drive and drop them and come to work and the whole thing.
Right.
So the front office, a long way to answer your short question. The front office kind of opted or voted to stay open the 8 to 5. And so most of our administrative staff works 8 to 5. The office is open still those regular hours.
Okay.
Production goes the other schedule, but there's a few people that have that flexibility because Fridays are definitely like, we love Fridays now. Fridays used to be stressful because you're trying to get all the cars out,
Right.
now or Thursday, but for the admin staff to come in on a Friday without production and you can catch up on your customer updates and you can really focus on some of your report cleanup and supplements or whatever you need to do.
Right. So is it so the actual office is open 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. So you're still open 5 days for the
Yep.
front office staff, but everybody in the back is doing the 4 days. Is it Monday through Thursday then for them? Okay.
And then
Yeah.
when we get here at 7:30 or 8, they're in full production mode back there. So
Right. Yeah. That's
Good.
an awesome option. Yeah. Okay. So that makes sense though. And I think that's part of why getting your team on board is so important and talking with them about it. Because, like you said, it's either all or nothing. We're not going to have, two techs can't be the ones working 5 days a week. Like, we're all going to do this or we're all not. And it's one thing to separate it front office versus back crew, like production and that type of thing. And I like the idea that the front office is still open because customers need you around. They need you to be available to field the phone calls and that kind of stuff. So it makes sense to keep those hours still available so that you're still available for the public. Because I know some shops are like potentially like closing on Fridays, but then how do
love it.
customers feel about that?
Yeah, exactly. So it works really good for us, but it also gives us the flexibility on Friday that we don't necessarily need the full admin staff here, just because there's a little bit less going on.
Right. Okay. Wow. So for those of you guys thinking about it, this could be the time to get ready to implement. How did you feel like it was a mess merging into it? Were there any bottlenecks that you found when you switched over?
No, it was pretty seamless for us, honestly.
Really?
Yeah. It improved our cycle time actually.
Okay.
And because there was less start and stop, and you only have to clean up 4 times instead of 5 times.
Right.
And all those those inefficiencies that you get from, I don't know, opening up shop and closing shop and all of that stuff. So it was pretty seamless, and I would say the biggest takeaway is it has been the best recruiting tool.
We need to talk about this on the podcast because Andy, you personally have been through your own mental health issues that you spoke about in the article. Would you mind sharing a little bit about that with people listening so we kind of have a baseline of where we're starting from?
Oh, for sure. And, it's a struggle today, almost as much as it was yesterday. I think I own it better. But I didn't really acknowledge that I had, mental health. There's a stigma, right? We talk about it. Just understanding the mental health aspect of somebody, and understanding that, hey, maybe the stuff that I'm going through now, or my mental state, it's not just something I can control. Maybe it's something that I can't control, or I need to acknowledge, or be cognitive, or be a little different to be able to manage these situations. So, I struggled a lot through school, through my 20s, through my 30s, and really not realizing and acknowledging mental health until probably about 8 or 9 years ago.
Wow.
So there was, so understanding that I was going through in the past, ADHD. I just thought that school, high school, college, all that stuff was just normally impossible. So I really wish, when I actually I found out, ADHD, and I was actually medicated properly, I was like, holy crap. Like this is actually what the world is like.
Right.
Where, I can actually hear something and possibly retain it, or, this or that. But there's depression, there's anxiety, there's just having a rough mental day. There's home life, there's so many things. Bipolar. I feel like I'm that checklist of every situation. Now, I don't point to it and blame it, but it's a part of me, and I acknowledge it and I own it. It's just been a part of my history. And, I am a little bit medicated, but I'm also afraid of medication to a point because I've had a, drug addiction, alcohol addiction, so on. So I'm very careful. So
Yeah.
am I fully medicated probably to where I should be? No, but I'm much better than I was off. And it's still a struggle every single day, but it's where I want to be.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I think what touched me so much in the article was you even saying outwardly and openly, because like you said, there is a stigma around speaking about it. And especially as a man in our culture, to speak about difficulties that are emotional, mental. It's like it's considered a weakness in some people's mind. And it's
That's
like,
exactly it. Yeah.
right. And then there's the embarrassment and the shame then that goes with it, and you can't talk about it. So I'm sure you dealt with all of that.
I own, sure, it could be a negative aspect, about me, but once again, I own it, to the point it defines kind of part of my personality and who I am. But you're right, like especially the male population, they're worried that their peers are going to see them as it's a weakness of going through a tough time, or the whole, suck it up, buttercup type thing. Or it's the being afraid to be judged. And especially in this industry, all of us have a product to sell or a service to sell. And are we worried that if we come out with certain things or more transparent with ourselves, are we going to be judged by our peers or our customers?
Yeah.
And not be able to thrive the way we want? And I feel like that's a myth. I feel like transparency and being ourselves, is really important. But I think what helps me be transparent is I know that it helps others.
Yes.
I know it encourages others to be transparent, and that's more of my inspiration more than anything.
So one of the things I started to do was lean into what were the unique perspectives, or what were the strengths, or what was the share that I could offer that was different from the group. And in some cases, I would get looked at like I had two heads. But in other cases, when someone was secure in their own skills and their own abilities and saw me as a team member, not a threat, or, oh my gosh, she could be my boss someday. Like here come the shenanigans, right?
Right.
When someone actually took the time to look at that and get curious and say, no, wait a minute. What was that you said? Because, we've been doing it this way for a long time, but in some cases your naivety or your fresh perspective could open us up to ideas or possibilities that we haven't thought of. I mean, you do have life experience, right? that we don't have.
Right.
And when we can, pun intended, pump the brakes here to welcome in these new ideas, there could be something worth exploring here.
Right. Well, and the perspective for all people, really, we all have a different perspective and lens we look at things through.
Right.
And then you talk about, men and women, and just how naturally, not that all men are the same or all women are the same, but, typically we do process differently. And, I think I also felt the same way coming into situations and just being a big question. Maybe that's why I'm a good podcast host, because I ask a lot of questions and I always have. But it was a lot of like, well, why do you do that? Well, why do we do that? Well, because that's the way we've always done it. Okay, but why? And just shifting that thinking because people had just done things for so long. And it sounds like you experience a lot of that too, of asking questions and giving feedback from and beautiful that you really didn't know what everybody else knew, because that's really where growth happens.
100%. Yeah. I mean, Mickey, your curiosity and questions are definitely two of your superpowers. And that's also a sign of growth mindset, not fixed mindset. And growth mindset is where we experience innovation, where you come up with different ideas, where, I was a part of a Greenbelt certification and a lean operating program with the collision centers. And the collision center owner had to have some growth mindset to welcome us in, to say, yes, we're really going to, blow up things as we know them, do it differently. I mean, essentially what we were doing, it's fun to visualize this again. was turning the shop into what to me looked like a huge board game. Everything was color coded. There were paths. There were, the shadow board was taken to the whole next level. And it was phenomenal to see the results, like how cycle time would go down. Well, that required curiosity, right? That required stepping out of comfort zone. That required growth mindset. And there were huge benefits on the other side.
Right. Now, one thing you had talked about was one thing that you felt like had helped you was having confidence. And I feel like that served me really well also. Can you speak on that for a moment?
Oh yeah. It's my favorite subject, Vicki. Yeah. And I mean, that was my secret sauce. I mean, that was my superpower at the time, because like you said, I mean, it was going to be a long time before I was the smartest or the most experienced person in the room.
Right.
Now I had to know my stuff, and I studied, and I made flashcards, and I did a lot of things that I probably never shared with anybody else when I was there.
That's awesome.
But I knew I needed to know my stuff, and I needed to know it 2-3 times as well. And, for women, sometimes women will see that as a disadvantage, or that's not fair. And I view it differently, that, that knowledge, I got to take that with me. Nobody could take that away from me. And yeah, maybe I did need to know it 3 times as well, but that knowing it 3 times as well had a multiplicative effect as I went throughout my career.
Right.
And one of the things I would do prior to going into meetings was I made my strategy. I had a preparation routine that I went through. So I thought about, okay, what's on the agenda? If there wasn't an agenda, I contacted the person running the meeting and said, what can I expect? What can I do to prepare? And so I came to the meeting with some key points thought about in advance. I came to the meeting with a couple questions prepared. I came thinking about what might they ask me.
Yeah.
And having responses prepared, and then also having the response prepared when I didn't know, because I didn't want to just say, well, I don't know.
Right.
And I would say something instead, like, that's a really good question. Let me look into it and I'll get back to you.